So, welcome to the Kickass Midlife Method, and we're discussing the Adventurous Aging Body Plan for midlife women. So, these are 5 steps to creating a lean, strong body for now and importantly for the decades ahead. Because if you're 45 plus, you really need to start thinking about beyond just the immediate body fat composition, but then what does being strong and healthy look like and require in terms of your strategy now for the next 20 to 30 years. We're probably all of that sandwich generation where some of us are helping with or caring for aging parents. So maybe seeing it firsthand what that kind of means. So what we're going to cover today. So this is a generalized, so it's not going to be, super personalized, but it's going to give you a really good overview of what those extra things are that you kind of really need to start thinking about. We're going to, the muscle that you need to build. And then interestingly, for a lot of you who are in my regular community, we're also talking about the quality of the muscle, fast twitch versus slow twitch muscles. So has anyone give me a 2 in the chat if any of you have heard of fast twitch muscles? A 3 if you have no idea what that is. So some of you do, which is good, great, and some of you don't. So there's a bit of a mixture. And then nutrition for muscle, energy, and body composition, which always gets a lot of women and what that actually looks like and why that's so important beyond just thinking about restriction and body fat loss. Understanding a little bit more about what creates fat loss and importantly, how to future-proof your brain, not just your body and what that kind of looks like in terms of strength work. So for anybody who is not from the community, I've got free spaces too for a kind of personalized strategy session where I'll calculate your nutritional intake and a kind of exercise outline. So if you want to do that, then message me on Instagram, the word body plan, and we can set that up for you. So a bit about me for those who don't know. I've been working with women and midlife women since 2008. Before that, I was a journalist working in women's health in particular on women's magazines. I set up boot camps first, so I worked face to face with women, and then I went into Girls Run the World, which took women around the world to races and also delved into running and triathlon training. So, number one, exercise. So, muscle it's not just about looking great and having lean muscles that you can see. It is absolutely your superpower. We're losing muscle every decade from 35, 30 really, and that increases past the age of menopause. So when you're losing muscle mass, obviously your physical strength is reducing progressively. When you're losing muscle, your metabolism slows down, so your insulin response is affected, increases your diabetes risk, which I'm going to go on to. Your frailty risk rises because if you have less muscles, you're more likely to fall over. And the more muscle mass you have, the more space you have to store carbohydrates. So this is a really interesting one. So it dramatically improves insulin sensitivity and lowers your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So those kind of things are all going on when you're losing muscle mass. So it is absolutely not just about looking good, having more muscles. It's not just about actually helping you get off your chair or running or doing the stuff you love or being able to travel when you're older. It's also about your metabolic health. So getting on to the quality of the muscle. So this is a really interesting one. And for women in our community, we go into adventurous aging and it changes slightly the kind of strength and conditioning you're doing or adapts and increases these kind of conditioning that works on fast twitch muscles. So your slow twitch muscles last, you can be born with more fast twitch than slow twitch and vice versa, but you can also develop them. So, for instance, I played loads of basketball when I was younger and I did lots of 400-meter running. So, actually, I've got quite a lot of fast twitch muscles. But for some of you know, I do loads of endurance running now. So, actually, I've developed a bit of more of the slow twitch muscles as well. But fast twitch muscles, they're the ones we lose the fastest with aging. So if you think about sprinting or moving really quickly, does anyone have any idea about why that might be useful when you get older? Put it in the chat. Any ideas why a fast twitch muscle might be really crucial for you as you get older? Anyone? Yeah, exactly, Wendy. It stops you falling. If you have a fast twitch muscle and reaction time, you can stop falling. So it's important just because actually it makes you feel more alive. You can do those things that actually create more endorphins, the power, speed, strength, reaction times. But actually, it's when you get older, it's that kind of vital thing. If you're going to suddenly stagger, your fast twitch muscle is going to pick you up. Your slow twitch muscles not pick you up, stop you falling. Just a turn of phrase. They're the ones we lose fastest with aging. So it's really important that you work and develop those fast twitch muscles, not just your slow twitch muscles. Their nutrition is just absolutely vital. And as I said at the beginning, as women of our generation, we've been brought up to think about nutrition simply as a way to lose weight. That's it. Don't think of anything else. And I know through going through it with some women in the community at the moment that once you start thinking about a surplus of calories, eating more than what your body needs, or not what your body needs, your maintenance to stay the same, it scares a lot of women. And actually, eating more than what your body needs helps you to build muscle. Without it, it's very difficult to build muscle. So actually, at some point, once you've lost a certain amount of body fat, you'll reach a stage where you're like, oh, I'm actually quite happy with that. And then it's actually really important to start thinking about, tweaking your nutrition to start thinking about having a little bit more. So you're beginning to actually develop that muscle, which is really important for your aging. And that is a massive mindset shift for a lot of women. It also helps you recover from training. So if you are not eating sufficiently, I see this so often with women when they first come into the community, or when I talk to women about their training, and you can do all the training and then people are not eating correctly because you're thinking, oh, I've got to, if I exercise and then I eat less, I'm going to lose weight more quickly. And what you're doing is undermining the exercise because you're not giving your body what it needs in order to develop that muscle that you've just created, that you've just worked. So nutrition is really important for that. And it's also really important for inflammation and that long-term outcomes. And then protein matters even more as you get older. So as we age, I think quite a lot of you probably in the program obviously understand protein, but also it's everywhere now. You can't walk into a supermarket without a protein product falling off the shelves in front of you. Like there's whole aisles devoted to it now. But what is probably less well known is that as you get older as a woman, your ability to synthesize protein, as in use protein to help build the muscle, becomes a little bit harder. So actually, that emphasis on making sure that you're nailing your protein requirements is even more important. You can kind of get away with it a little bit more when you're younger. When you're older, you really need to know the amount of protein you should be having for your body and your goals, and be tracking it until you're very comfortable with thinking, oh, actually, I know that I'm eating enough protein. So for those who don't know, and I spoke to someone in the community the other day actually, and who didn't realize this, when you exercise and you're challenging the muscle, you need to challenge the muscle. And what is happening and what you want to happen is to create microscopic tears in your muscle fibers. As that repairs, and it only will repair with protein, otherwise you've torn the muscle and nothing happens if you don't give it the protein. The protein knits that muscle back together and makes it bigger. And that's what's happening with progressive overload in strength training. That's why you need progressive overload, but it has to be combined with correct protein. Otherwise, you can't have one without the other. You're not going to get the effect. So, helps you build, retain muscle, improves recovery, stabilizes your blood sugar. So, I don't know how many people in this program now find that, like with a protein check at 2 to 4 o'clock, they no longer have sugar rushes. Yes or no? Yeah. I think quite a lot now have said that 50-50. Maybe look at your protein. If it's still 50-50, maybe look at that a little bit more about the times you're having protein throughout the day as well. But for most people, it makes a big difference once you're eating sufficient protein because it keeps you feeling fuller for longer. And then obviously it's the most important dietary lever in terms of ensuring that better body composition. And then just touching a little bit more on body fat and fat in general, because again, this is really important as you age. Body fat percentage, in a way, matters more than weight. You can be the same weight as someone, but have a higher visceral fat than someone, and then a poorer metabolic health because of that, because visceral fat creates inflammation, which leads to chronic disease. And visceral fat starts being more of an issue the older you get. So, actually, what you want to track, more importantly, which is what we do in the community, is your body fat percentage and your measurement. So, your waist circumference is an indication of visceral fat, and some scales will give you your visceral fat. A lot don't. They're not as accurate as going into a DEXA scan or something like that, but they will give you a kind of before and a benchmark to work from. So thinking about your visceral fat and thinking about your body fat composition is really important. So visceral fat, if you don't know what it is, it's like you've got your fat that just sits around on your tummy, subcutaneous fat, and then your visceral fat is the stuff that's deeper than that and wraps around your organs. And this is releasing inflammatory chemicals into the body all the time. And that drives inflammation, hormonal disruption, and that's the thing that drives chronic inflammation, which leads to more things like cardiovascular disease, cancer, brain health, dementia risk. Obviously, the higher the inflammatory risk. So, working to reduce that visceral fat is really important. Now, again, those typical things that work towards it are the resistance training, your nutrition, and also your stress and sleep management. So what we're looking as we get older, we're not just thinking of that short-term thing about what does my tummy look like. Obviously, I'm not saying that's not important either. If body confidence, looking in the mirror and liking what you see is important. But also it's beyond that, beginning to think about what's going on with my visceral fat. How is that affecting my long-term health? I'll just go back to that actually. So what I said, the scales, you can get scales that will do your visceral fat. The other way to do it is give you the specifics. If you measure around your belly button, that will give you an indication. So 35 inches, 88 centimeters or above is generally a kind of indication of a higher risk of visceral fat. So tracking that waist and your hip and your chest measurements are all really good ways of also keeping on track of your kind of long-term health and body composition and visceral fat. And then number four, like structure is absolutely key. For those who have been coached in the Kickass Midlife Method for a while, you'll hear me banging on about this all the time because yes, intellectually, we know what we should be eating. Intellectually, we know what we should be doing on exercise. I hear it often, all the time. I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it. I don't have the willpower. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. You've got to get rid of all of that and just be like, structure is key. Like, you never go to work and miss a meeting. You don't miss a meeting because it's important. You put it in your diary. Similarly, you shouldn't be missing meals. Put it in the diary. Put your workout in the diary. Because your workout's in the diary doesn't mean to say you want to do it. Because a meeting's in the diary doesn't say you want to do it, but you do it anyway. It's the same, what you go from it on the same, exactly the same principle. So structure is key. Always plan everything. Adequate protein, plan it. Thinking about your better food quality and, consistency over perfection always wins. So those 3 short workouts done a week, even when you don't want to do them, is going to be far better and create much better results, short term and long term, than a week of a sudden blitz. And then adventurous aging, it is so important for your brain too. So who does anything new, anything at all? What have you done? Give me something in the chat that you've done new this week? Or let me be a bit fairer. This month. Anything new? Started to learn chess this month. Nice. Half learned the social foxtrot. I like that. That's great. Learned to build a shed window. Nice. That's pretty good as well, actually. I'm liking the variety. Got three anymore? Any more? Starting to use software at hurt. Yes, yeah. And it's funny that comment, starting to use new software at work and making my brain hurt. I remember when I did my personal training qualification, um, and when I first started learning the anatomy, it actually did hurt my brain. It doesn't do that when you're younger. And going back to learning, it hurts your brain. So yeah, started flute lessons again after 30. Yeah, exactly. So those things are really important for the neuroplasticity because your brain kind of, if you imagine, it almost gets a bit clogged up. And so learning new things, like I just find myself doing it weirdly. Like I was paddle. I started paddle and they had got these like big long tubes. And I was like, what's that? And like you can pick up the tennis balls like this with a big long tube. And I was like, oh, I'll have a go at that. And then like I was like, oh, I'm going to try it with my left hand and then my right hand. So you can kind of bring anything into your day, like brush your teeth with your opposite hand. All of those things are also really important for your dexterity, but just make your brain work in a little in a different kind of way. So as we get older, we tend to get more comfortable staying in, not want to go out. So you stop going out to like theatre or music a little bit, or you're less likely to. Um, Maybe you're not learning a language anymore, you're not meeting as many new people, potentially, not always. And all of those things start to have an effect on how you age, your outlook on aging, your and just the health of your brain. So all of those things are really important. So your five-step framework, I mean, this is a very, very simplified look at adventurous aging, but build muscle. So absolutely, number one is so vital to train it progressively. So progressively overloading, which means that you're incrementally increasing the weight that you use on an exercise, if not every week, every set, so that you've got that challenge. Protect your fast twitch muscles. So that's a little bit harder to begin with. Yeah, I always say start with your two-footed, two arms kind of strength work first, and then once you've got that, you start developing fast twitch muscles. So for some people in this group, I've got them on sprint interval training. So for some of you, you might be thinking, sprint interval training? What are you talking about? I'm 55 or 60 or 65. I can't do sprint interval training. Sprint interval training doesn't mean to say that you are suddenly picturing Usain Bolt and that you have suddenly have to be Usain Bolt. It's whatever sprinting is to you. For some of you, a sprint could be the equivalent of a fast walk, but it's getting that kind of fast reaction um, uh, muscles that will develop that sideways movement, kind of those movements that you probably did as a child that you never thought about, jumping, crawling, climbing, all of those things are things that will help develop your fast twitch muscles and your neural plasticity as well. Eat to support eat to support the loss of visceral fat and body fat, but also once that's done, to support the growth of muscle and your metabolic health. So it's really important that you prioritize your protein, that you understand how much protein you should be having for your body weight and your goals, the quality of your food in terms of the quality of your carbohydrate, in terms of glycemic index, how quickly sugar is released into the body. That becomes more and more important in menopause and beyond, and structuring that into your day and structure. So again, you don't rely on random workouts. You don't go to, if you're going to a gym and you're not aware of the weights that you're lifting, then you're probably not doing very much other than cardiovascularly helping and and the connection with others. But in terms of actually body composition changes and building muscle, if you don't know what weight you're lifting, you're not doing progressive overload and it's not creating the results that you would be wanting. And then train your brain to support neuroplasticity and reduce the inflammatory effects of aging. So yeah, your future body is being built. Well, your future body is being built right from when you're a kid. But if you're starting now, what you do now will directly affect what you can do and how you age. Touch wood, health aside, the nutrition we eat, how we exercise affects health. Certain things, who knows, cancer, for instance, just happens sometimes. We don't have any kind of understanding why. But you can do everything you can do in terms of increasing, improving your nutrition. Your exercise is going to have an effect right now on how you live in your 60s, 70s, and 80s and your independence. So again, if you want to get one of the two spaces on that, get that personalized intake on what your nutrition should look like for you and your body weight, just DM me on Instagram, body plan. So are there any questions around that or anything you'd like me to dig into a little bit more? I loved all your new stuff, which was great. And the netball, talking about netball as well, that's also really good from that point of view of sideways movements because you're like having to move left and right. And often we spend ages, we sit in a certain way, we drive in a certain way, we walk in a certain way. It's all on a certain plane of movement. So those kind of left and right movements. When I used to train people in person, I used to get them to do kettlebell swings laterally and it would absolutely kill people because it was so much harder um, physically to move right and left with a kettlebell than just staying just